Nimble, efficient is the way that you want to build your culture to be. You want to embrace that culture of how can we do this better? How can we do this faster? How can we do this with less resources? What I want to do today is I want to talk about embracing a work culture of simplification. Yes, you heard it, simplification. And one of the things that happened for you guys that subscribe to my newsletter, if anybody wants to know how to subscribe to it that isn't getting it, it is a really good newsletter. But what I talked about in the newsletter was I talked about our family trip. We took the kids for spring break. We took them to Disney World. Yes, we braced it. We asked them where they wanted to go. And the only place they could say was Disney. We tried to manipulate them as parents and tell them to take something else. And they picked Disney World, right? And so we took a really, really long road trip to Disney World. And it was like one of those really long 2-day trips to Disney World. And when we got there, just like I talked about in the letter, there were some really, really long lines in Disney, right? And that's probably typical for Disney. Everybody wants to go to Disney. People have been locked up for years now, right? Not even for months, for years. And they're just happy to get out. And so one of the first places that their kids want to do now that they're 3 years old is they want to go to Disney. And so we went to Disney and we stood in those lines and they were probably like 90 minutes each line. I mean, even just to ride the Dumbo, like that Dumbo was like 90 minutes just to ride a Dumbo or spin in a teacup. I'm like, I can't believe that we're waiting 90 minutes to ride in a Dumbo. And my husband, if you guys know anything about my husband, is he does not believe in the fast pass. You guys know about the fast pass. That's that thing that you can schedule rides, or in some of the parks, you can actually cut the line and get to the front. That man does not believe in the fast pass. He does profit first for his personal finances. All right. He read my book for personal reasons, and he does profit first for his personal finances. And he believes that by standing in line for 90 minutes, right, when your knees are buckling, your feet are hurting, he believes that this is how you build character in young children. He truly believes that. And I'll tell you, he's right. It absolutely does build character. I mean, my knees were killing me after 2 days of waiting in line. My feet was killing me. I mean, I had muscles that were hurting that I didn't even know I had. It was like pretty intense, these 90-minute lines. And I'll tell you this, it actually felt good to walk around, right? You got your joints moving when you weren't standing in line. It actually felt good to walk around when we weren't standing in line. But the interesting part was we found out while we were in Disney, we found out that the world's largest McDonald's resides in Orlando. Okay. The world's largest McDonald's resides in Orlando. Isn't that neat? Like, did you even think there would be a world's largest McDonald's? Like, who would think? And in fact, it's located right on International Drive. Isn't that like amazing? And it is the sight to see. Okay. Like when you see this like McDonald's, like you can't unsee it. It's like an amazing sight. It's got like an arcade. It's got multiple floors. They make brick oven pizzas for you. They even make an omelet. So if you're like there at like 2:00 in the morning, you want an omelet and a waffle, they will make that for you, custom order for that to go. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the world's largest McDonald's. I was like floored. I was like, this is insanity, right? And I have never seen anything like it. And well, on our last night in Orlando, right, it was pretty late because, you go to those theme parks, you can't get out before 9:00. And for us, one of the things that we wanted to do before we left was we wanted to stop by the world's largest McDonald's, right? That was something we just wanted to do. And so we got there probably around 9:00 at night, and it was a Thursday evening. And it had already been a pretty long day because we were at Epcot, but we decided that we were just going to go ahead and do the drive-thru, right? It couldn't hurt anything by doing this drive-thru at the world's largest McDonald's. And the line didn't look bad. It looked kind of like a typical McDonald's line. I mean, it was like one of those 2-lane drive-thrus. You guys saw it. You can order on the right, you can order on the left, and you can cut the line if you're the last person to figure out which line is moving the fastest. You guys have seen it. It was just a regular line, right? And each lane had about 7 cars in it. So maybe 14 cars total. And what McDonald's can't handle 14 cars, right? It's just 14 cars. And that's what fast food does, right? They handle cars, and 14 cars isn't a lot for fast food, especially when it has 2 lanes. But what we started to notice as we were sitting in line was the line wasn't moving. Like the line was not moving. Like we were literally staying parked in the same spot for like, it felt like hours. Okay. It felt like hours. And after 10 minutes of the line not moving, okay, like standing in this line, we started to see that people were actually starting to leave the line, right? They were starting to leave the line. They were starting to park in the parking spaces that were next to McDonald's. And they were leaving because they figured, hey, we can just get served faster, hopefully, if we just go inside, because this line on the outside just seems endless. And after about 20 minutes of waiting in line and sitting in this parking lot, I think at that point we were like car number 5 at that point because people were starting to move out of the line. We decided, hey, we're just going to leave this line. We're just going to go to the Taco Bell across the street, Taco Bell. And it probably was the world's smallest Taco Bell. It was nothing fancy about it, but it didn't have any cars, right? And it was interesting because as I was sitting in the line and I was started to think, right? Because that's what happens when you sit there, right? You just start to think, all these thoughts just kind of go through your mind. And one of the thoughts that I had was, how complex must this have been for McDonald's? How complex must their operations have been? When I think about your local McDonald's, and hopefully we don't have any vegans here, I'm not going to grace them out, right? The local McDonald's, it's a pretty simple process, right? It's not really complex. It doesn't have a whole lot to it. You can get a regular bun, you can get a sesame bun, you can get 2 patties with cheese, you get one that has no cheese, right? It's just, how do you want your burger, 2 or 1, right? It's a very simple operation. And there's just not much to this menu. And you can get fancy. You can get fancy at McDonald's. You can order a fish sandwich, right? But for the most part, the menu is very, very simple. And just about everything on the menu on McDonald's, it comes with a fry. You can get it super size and you can get a fountain drink, right? There's nothing fancy to it. And, I think the fanciest thing is just getting something super size is really what happens at McDonald's. But on this McDonald's, this world's largest McDonald's, McDonald's on International Drive, this McDonald's was serving up brick oven pizza, right? And if you are a pepperoni person and you like pepperoni, you can get as much pepperoni as you want, right? If you were a sausage and peppers person, you can get it your way, right? And if you're a vegan, why not have it vegetarian, right? McDonald's could accommodate you being vegetarian. And this McDonald's, what was happening was it was catering to everyone. It was catering to every single customer, every single taste, and it was meeting you at your level. And at some point, what was happening was the operations were so complex, right? It was so complex that this McDonald's couldn't get the orders out on time, right? And unfortunately, they had hit a point where they were actually starting to lose customers, right? Because they couldn't get these orders out on time. And I mean, just 14 cars in line and you can't even serve them, right? That's pretty significant. And as McDonald's, they couldn't move cars because their operations was too complex, right? The operations were just way too complex. And just imagine for a minute, imagine the time it takes for someone to create an omelet, right? I am definitely not an expert in omelets. If I'm going to do an omelet, I need like an hour to like prep and like get it right, right? And if you're doing omelets and you're making them a specific way, right, versus the time it takes to make a double cheeseburger, right, or a Big Mac, an omelet's going to take a significant amount of time to make and compared to what McDonald's normally serves, because an omelet is a much more complex vehicle, right? And I'm willing to bet that probably not every single high school kid can make an omelet well, right? Because that's pretty complex. And just to be honest with that, you're hiring mostly high school kids and you're asking them to make an omelet. I mean, I almost feel like you need to have a chef license to make that pretty well, right? You get that in fancy hotels, right? And it was interesting because this article came out the same day that I released our newsletter. And I had no idea that this was going to happen. I had no idea that this was something that McDonald's was facing. And I got this article. This article came out actually the day that we released the newsletter. And what this article said was that it was actually published as part of Entrepreneur Magazine. And the article, and what it did was it stated that McDonald's is closing all of its U.S. offices ahead of pending layoffs. That's pretty big news, right? McDonald's has always been a staple in this country. And it's always been there. Nobody would think of McDonald's having layoffs. I mean, like, I have to confess, there are probably days that are really busy. I probably go there like twice a day. Okay. Like, whoever heard of McDonald's closing and having layoffs? And McDonald's was closing because what happened was they needed to be able to deliver news that was going to be negative, right? They were going to deliver news that they were laying off and terminating quite a bit of their employees, and they wanted to do it virtually. They didn't want to do it in person. I imagine it's because of, what was happening and, with the economy, they're afraid of like people getting upset, that type of thing. But they were asking people to work from home because I guess you would get a Zoom call if you were going to be terminated. And I had no idea when I was writing my newsletter that the world's largest McDonald's, right, their corporate office was going to have a layoff the following week. I had no idea. Now, don't get me wrong. Please do not get me wrong about this. whenever someone starts talking about layoffs, right? Whenever layoffs start happening, it absolutely breaks my heart, right? And it breaks my heart because we're dealing with real people's lives. Okay. We're dealing with real people's lives, and lives matter more to me than anything else. Lives matter more to me than profit. People's lives matter to me. And I'm sure as entrepreneurs, I know each of you guys, it matters to you too. When we're talking about layoffs, we're talking about people's dreams, right? We're talking about it's going to have an impact to their children, and it's also going to impact their families. And we never take layoffs lightly, right? In fact, it's cruel. It can be cruel. And for some people, a layoff, it can impact that person. It can be a game changer for their finances, even for a lifetime, right? Because how they see themselves, how they incorporate what they do every day as being part of our identity, right? It can affect them for a long time. Layoffs are very significant. And recently, I had a conversation with one of my private clients. He was just starting his profit first journey. And part of his journey was we were beginning to evaluate each and every position on his payroll. And to be honest with you, there will be job loss in his company, right? There are going to be some people that are going to lose their jobs. And trust me, we were very, very sad about it. But sometimes it has to be done, and there's no way around it. A company just cannot continue to bleed cash. It can't continue to borrow money for payroll. And unfortunately, what happens, and I think there's a lot of pressure, for people that I think for everybody, I think it's an American thing. I know, Goldman Sachs, one of the things that would happen when we went through the program, we were creating jobs for people, right? And there's an allure that entrepreneurs fall into, and it's that allure for large team, large buildings, large overhead. And there's a lot of pressure to get bigger, right? To create more opportunities, to create more jobs. And when I say things like overhead, I'm talking about fancy office spaces. I'm talking about expensive advertising. I'm talking about those long-term lease. I'm even talking about taking on debt, okay? Because debt actually becomes part of your overhead because you got to put that into your monthly budget, right? And one of the things that I feel like that isn't really emphasized a lot in corporate is we don't emphasize creating cultures of leanness, right? We don't emphasize creating culture of achieving efficiencies first, like being efficient as an organization, being efficient as a culture, right? Because at the end of the day, right, if we don't emphasize a culture of leanness and achieving efficiency, what happens is that gravy chain has to end at some point, right? We can't continue to spend on things that we can't afford. We can't continue to bleed cash, right? If you're borrowing to make payroll, right? And you cannot sustain people on payroll if you do not hire responsibly, right? And you cannot keep people on payroll if your overhead is creeping into your profits, right? If it costs you too much to run your business, you're not going to be able to keep people on payroll. And now that's exactly what happens to McDonald's headquarters, right? That's exactly what happened to McDonald's headquarters. They found themselves in this situation. And in this article, what happens is they talked about how they had to have their corporate employees work from home from Monday and Wednesday so they could handle those layoffs virtually, because they couldn't even have those conversations with their employees because they didn't want to see the reaction. They didn't want to have adverse reactions from their employees. And their CEO, Chris Kaminsky, told the employees, literally, he goes, that the job cuts had to be expected at some point. Like he was expecting it to happen. And he said it was because McDonald's needed to streamline operations and increase efficiency. That's what he said. The layoffs were happening to streamline operations and increase efficiency. And I bring this up to you because obviously prior to this layoffs, right? Obviously, this is very obvious. McDonald's was not emphasizing efficiency as much as we think that it would have been. It obviously wasn't, because they were in this place, right? And this place was proof. And even they were admitting they needed to be more efficient, right? They did not emphasize streamlining operations. And so now they had to cut jobs. So you guys know, my story. I recently divested our traditional accounting and tax practice in November. And it was a happy, sad moment, because I absolutely love the firm. But it was time for me to do what I really love to do. And in our lives, we look back, we have a limited amount of time to have the impact to do the things that we want to do. And for me, I wanted to focus on my fractional CFO work. I wanted to focus on really changing people's lives with profit first. And my favorite is the high net worth strategic tax plan. I wanted to do more of that. But one of the things that we've done since we've separated the two entities is we've held off on hiring anyone for quite a long time. Like literally, like we probably needed someone yesterday, but we're holding off. Okay. We're holding off. And even though we've grown, we're not bringing someone on. And the reason why we're doing this is because I want to focus on optimizing our processes first. Okay. And the reason why I want to focus on optimizing our processes is because I only want to bring someone on when we really, really need them, right? And what this means is in the temporary, in this meantime, right, while we're stretching and we're growing and we're optimizing our operation, what that means is that our existing team members, they've had to learn more skills, right? They had to learn more things that they weren't doing maybe a year ago. They had to learn more tech. They had to learn what other people were doing. And we're literally doing more with less is what's happening. We're embracing technology. You guys have probably seen it. You guys have been with us for a while. We're not tagging anymore the way we used to tag one by one. Now we're doing texting, right? We're texting 15 minutes ahead of time instead of like having someone come and tag. We're also using more automation, right? We're using more automation in our emails. We're scheduling our emails in advance, so that we're not sending them all, or writing them out as we're sending it. We're scheduling them in advance. And for our private clients, we're also automating their tap transfers. And we've had to make some hard decisions, okay? I had a friend of mine and he called me up this week and he was asking me if he could hire me. And he was asking if he could hire me to help him create a business plan for this startup IT company that he's creating. He's super excited about it. And he's been a friend of mine for a while. And I was like, I really, really wish I could help you, but I have to turn this down. And we turned him down because we made a decision, and our decision to be efficient, right? We chose not to take on additional clients that are outside of the scope of what we really wanted to offer, because it was important that we really maintain a certain level of quality as well as efficiency as we scale. Okay. So that means turning down some opportunities. And it means particularly turning down engagements that are not in the area that we want to grow in, right? And we've been very selective. We've been very selective about staying really true to what we're good at, because we want to deliver that optimum quality with the least amount of team. And we want to make sure we deliver it on time. And we're doing this because we want to grow responsibly, right? We don't want to grow and experience layoffs and terminations, right? We want to bring on team members. And when we bring on these team members into our organization, we want to make sure that they know that their contributions matter, right? We want to know that when we're choosing to bring on a team member, they're going to be an integral part of our operations when we bring them on. We don't want to bring on any casualties. We want everybody to count in our organization. And efficiency at the end of the day, it's important, right? It's important at the end of the day because one of the biggest drains on your profitability will be your fixed costs related to your payroll, right? That's going to be one of the biggest overhead expenses that you're going to have, especially in that administrative layer. And when you keep overhead down, right? When you keep those costs down and controlled, right? When you allow yourself to remain nimble and flexible, right, with the times, not only are you going to be more profitable, right? But I'm going to be honest with you. Let's just be honest with you. You're going to have less stress, right? You're going to have less stress when you have a nimble organization. Because a nimble organization, right, an efficient organization, what that means to you means you got less things to manage, right? And you got less things that break. So nimble and efficient is the way to go. Nimble, efficient is the way that you want to build your culture to be. You want to embrace that culture of how can we do this better? How can we do this faster? How can we do this with less resources? And so what I'm saying is, although the world's largest McDonald's was a pretty amazing sight to see, at the end of the day, if this McDonald's, right, if it costs more to create this McDonald's, if it costs more to operate the world's largest McDonald's, right, and if the profits are actually less than a regular McDonald's, right, because customers are obviously leaving, they could even service a line of 14 cars. What good in the world is it being the world's largest McDonald's, right? What good in the world does that do for you, right? Being the largest McDonald's, you'll be better off just being a regular McDonald's. So as I send you off today, may you be nimble and swift and know that you're truly bringing good into the world, because when you hire responsibly, you disrupt the lives of very few. So thank you for joining me today. And I hope this was really helpful for you. Until next time, may the profits be with you.